Okay, Ben. So we'll do another Q&A, and this time it's on communication. So number one question, first question. What do you think people misunderstand about communication?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is that communication is about speaking.
Okay.
I think people just make the assumption that to communicate means to talk, whereas one, it doesn't. Communication is a two-way thing, right? And two, actually the most important part of communication to me is listening. And what I mean by that is people often have conversations which are one way. You're like talking against the wall. So you're talking to somebody, they've already got a predetermined answer. They're paying no attention to what you're saying apart from the space that they can get in and feed back what they want to say. So I think that is probably the biggest overlooked piece. I think when I've spoke about this before to somebody about in meetings, what's the best way to deliver the biggest impact? And I think you can go into a meeting with a plan of what you want to go over, but I think the best way to go about it is let the whole forum talk, give them the space to talk. First off, I think it's good because it allows people who are a bit, or tend to be a bit quieter, to put their voices across before some of the more empowering voices come in. But two, you can take and listen to the whole conversation, and what you had as your predefined response going into the meeting may change slightly depending on the context of what's gone in, which means you take your idea, take on board what's been said in the room, and then deliver a response that's against that, to give the biggest impact. So I think the biggest oversight when it comes to communication is assuming that you are talking and not considering the importance and the super huge value of listening in itself.
Explain the importance of body language when communicating with people.
There's a lot that you can take from body language. I think there's one you have to pay attention to. So if you're talking to somebody, you speak volumes in what you say body wise as opposed to what you just say from your mouth. So you need to be paying attention to actively. So if I'm talking to you now and looking at you, when I'm talking to the guys, I'm looking at the camera, right? You need to be paying them your absolute attention first off. And what I mean is not they're standing here and you start looking off, yeah, I'm listening to you, but you're not because you're over there, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're having a conversation with them and you start to drop your shoulders or act in a way that says I'm disinterested. Or at the same time, you're having a conversation and they counter you with a point, and then you stand there and you cross your arms and you naturally give out, okay, I'm defending myself here. So I think that's super crucial. I think there is also a subset outside of body language directly. So it came up in a Simon Sinek talk I was watching actually, and it was about how you use your phones when it comes to conversation. So if you go into a meeting room and the first thing you do is put your phone on the table, if you go into a one-to-one conversation and the first thing you do is put your phones on the table, face up, what that basically says is, I'm putting that there so I can pay attention to the phone. And that means you're not the most important person here. If that rings, the phone is the most important person. So even something as simple as that, you're sending out a message. So if you've got a phone, then keep them in your pockets. Leave them at your desk. Put them in your bag. But don't be the first thing that you do when you sit down is you sit down and you put your stool out on the table as being, right, here's my world. You're just a minor distraction for this moment in time. So I think it's you need to pay attention to words that you're saying and the way that you're manifesting, you're sending out your message for your body wise. And again, also factor in any external accessories like phones and stuff that can contribute to that.
Okay, switching slightly, I know that you weren't always Mr. Confident Ben, and you weren't always Mr. Confident as you are now. So how did you go about getting over your issues of your confidence in communicating with people? And because as right now in our group, you're probably the best orator. So how did you personally go about overcoming that shyness and your oration skills?
That is a good question. So I don't know. I think it's a whole learning process. So I think one of it is, and we spoke about it in a recent show, is embracing feedback from people. Because I went through different iterations. Like I went from being super quiet to being kind of super emotional and angry. And then it's about asking for that feedback and having that degree of self-awareness to understand where you need to focus on it. And then I'll be entirely honest, and I've said it to people before, I spend a lot of time practicing talking. As in, I spend a lot of time talking aloud when I'm in the place by myself, right? And I also jump to opportunities to speak in front of other people, because one of the biggest fears that people have when it comes to anything, and I've heard people who have avoided going for jobs before because they had to do like a presentation because they couldn't handle the idea of speaking, even just on a one-to-one, if the whole focus was on them. And it's weird because people can openly have conversations, but once they become the center of attention, they find it difficult to overcome. So I think it's one of those, you just slowly have to put yourself in a position. There was no secret answer. When I spoke to one of the guys at work, I was like, believe it or not, I was shy when I grew up. They're like, what? I don't believe it. For me, it was looking up on practices of how to get better at speaking, and two, really just looking out there for opportunities to speak and being ready to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. First time you do it, yeah, you're about to go in a room and you're anxious and you might be a bit sweaty, and then when you get through the end of the first one, you realise it's not all that bad. So it comes back to, again, a topic we've touched on before, is putting yourself in a position to face your challenges head on. And I think for me, that's just how I had to go from being the shy, reserved individual to the open and outward one I am now.
Alright, good. I think that's enough for communication Q&A. Thanks for your time, Ben.